Hello everybody, my name is Veladam01 and welcome back to the next episode of City Skylines East of the Curtain, my former Eastern Bloc inspired city building series. Sorry that there was no episode for more than a month. This only happened because I had to travel to Germany in the middle of August and I only came back in the middle of September. So I have just basically spent an entire month in Germany and obviously I was not able to record anything. Even I tried to make some episodes in advance, just recording it, editing it, then just uploading it to the YouTube with a schedule when it should be published, but I just couldn't make it in time before I left, so this is why this forced break occurred. But finally I am back, but before we start, let me just fresh up your knowledge and let me just talk about what happened in the previous 2 episodes. So, 2 episodes before this, I have built first this really nice new prefab housing estate here on this side of the town, of the city. Then I have built another of these big prefab housing estate on the other side of the city. And third, I have also built a third one, which is on the other side of the river. And to be honest, this is the one that I think ended up being the best, the nicest. Here I think this is okay, kinda okay, I have no problem with it. But if I look at this here, especially on this side of the road, because on this side of the road I think this is actually okay, but here I think that here this here just fucking sucks. I don't know why, but I think this is a really big problem here, that how it looks. I think this is maybe because this big gap around the estate and not by its design. So this is something that I should address as soon as possible. I don't know how I will address it. Maybe I will just make a separate episode of fixing it, or just fixing it in a city fixing live stream, or I will just fix it completely off camera, but I don't know yet. Then in the previous episode I have built here some road expansion. If you could remember, there used to be here a big curve that led the traffic to this island here. Now that curve got replaced and here stands a new single point urban interchange, which is hooked up on the other side to the already existing road network, and on the other side it is just hooked up to this newly built area with a new bridge over this branch of the river. And we also have some issues in the city, that more issues than this being ugly. For example, you can see that there are a lot of empty lots in the city. They are not used to be empty. There used to be some buildings here, but the buildings disappeared because the Steam account that uploaded them to the workshop got deleted, and it just means that all the buildings disappeared from here. So this is also a problem that I should address. But as I told you, I don't know how I will address this problem. Maybe in a separate video, maybe in a city fixing live stream, or just completely off camera, but who cares? It will be addressed as soon as possible. Okay, so at the moment in the city we have some medium demand for commercial zone and pretty high demand for industry or offices, because the game just handles them as one, even though by gameplay wise they are completely different kind of zoning, industry and office. So I think this sets the today's topic of today's episode, and we are going to build some industry related stuff. Okay, so I am going to work on this edge of the city, where I am going to build a massive new modern style industrial district. By the way, you can already tell, just because of the beginning of the video, that I wanted to make this episode as a live play, but sadly I figured out in the hard way that it won't work, because I just cannot make a 40 minutes long gameplay with commentary where I am just basically doing nothing and just designing stuff and muffling about whether this design looks okay or not. So I just fell back to make a time-lapse and commentary video. So what I did is I just built here a massive road expansion, just continuing the already known grid pattern that I already heavily use, just to make myself a nice playground for designing. And I also have some important things to mention here. That first, you can see that there would be no railway connection here in this area, and all deliveries would be made using trucks here. The reason behind this is obvious when you look around on the map, because there is no railway tracks around here in this area. The nearest railway is on the other side of the river and it is quite far away, and I just didn't want to just mess up everything around here by building some big and heavy railway infrastructure that would be gone up in the next episode or somewhere in the future when I will just do some city expansion again. So, you know, all the deliveries would be made by trucks, as I have mentioned. So thank God I have built that new bridge in the previous episode, so the trucks don't have to go through the downtown to export their products that were made here in this industrial area. By the way, I also built the main road using the Trolleybus Avenue asset, because I would make a trolleybus line here off camera into this industrial area to provide some environmental trying to encourage them to use public transport for going to work, so at least their cars won't adapt to the traffic and clog up the main road that would already experience quite heavy cargo traffic in the future. And I also built some water canals in the industrial area, as I would like to return to and continue the river system that is inspired by the water hazard section of Half-Life 2. You know, where Gordon Freeman is put into an airboat to escape on the river from City 17 to Black Mesa East. And if you played that game, you could remember that there were a lot of industrial sites here in this section, and also some combined and civil protection forces and some helicopter chases trying to take Gordon down, but that is a completely different story. Here in this series and this video, I would just like to focus on the environment that Valve created and trying to rebuild and give back the atmosphere as accurate as possible. And maybe these waterways could also be used later for cargo transport using the barges from the barges mod, which I have installed, but actually I haven't used yet in this city, but maybe later I would use them. So the concept behind this road layout that I have built here in this industrial area is that the road layout creates these big industrial lots where the industrial buildings would be, and you would see that I have built these roads inside the lots, which are internal roads for that industrial facility. They are used for accessing the facility for workers and trucks and loading the deliveries that are associated with these industrial companies. And as stated in their category, these roads are designed to be used strictly internally, as they are restricted from external traffic. Then these internal roads are not connected directly to the main roads, as I didn't want to make a lot of unnecessary junctions along the way, so I just hooked them up to the crossroads and backroads of the districts. These crossroads and backroads are kind of external roads, as they allow external traffic, but yet they are still designed to just offer an access point for the facilities and to allow vehicles that are not allowed on internal roads to go around without the need to go out on the main road if it is unnecessary, and to provide a parking lot for the visitors that came to visit the companies, you know, like workers who have no dedicated parking lots inside the properties, or just some business delegates or the OSAJ inspectors. But since we are in Eastern Europe, the latest is quite rare. And the main roads are for simply the generic traffic, whether it goes to just one of the companies in the industrial area or just goes through to access something different in the city. But I actually managed to create a nicely working and efficient road hierarchy in this area, where only the highway connections are missing. And of course I have built a small roundabout where the two main roads intersect each other to create something nice design in the detailing part, but spoiler, as this is an industrial zone, the roundabout won't be as nice as a residential or commercial area roundabout, but something that works well with the dirtiness of the industry. For the industrial buildings themselves, I used a variety of assets, mostly from the Steam workshop. For example, first I placed down these distribution center assets, which came in two color variations, dark and light, basically black and white, to make it more easily understandable. And these were made by Avanya, who is a really well-known asset creator. She makes assets on the workshop since the beginning of City Skylines, and she also made the Industrial Evolution DLC, from where I used some assets to make loading bays for commercial stores and in the previous episodes, and some industrial facilities that were built in this video. And I also built these big factory hall assets, also made by Avanya. These also have two versions, and maybe I should regret placing them this many times, because man, these bad boys are so huge, and when I looked at their stats, I was just like, holy shit, how many workplaces do they have? And I just basically effectively created a massive demand for new residential areas, which I have to tackle in some next and future episodes. To fill the lots that were left empty, I tried to build some smaller industrial companies that only have warehouses or just a small manufacturing plant, and not like these big factory halls or logistic and distribution centers. For these lots, I mostly used some assets like assets from the industrial modules pack made by Gapcove, or some Soviet factory building assets made by Alex BY, or the age-old warehouse assets made by the already mentioned Avanya. I also tried to incorporate some modern-looking offices into the industrial area, to not let it just be pure industrial. Sometimes it meant even bulldozing already built industrial buildings. Here I used assets from various assets creators like Robel, King Leno, and many more, and I found out that these office buildings are actually blending pretty well into the scene that I created here, and maybe these offices are some administration parts of the industrial facilities that overwatch the production. Or maybe these are some company headquarters because the companies just found it more easy and convenient to build their HQs next to their industrial plant instead of just renting or buying or just finding separate properties for it at other places like in the downtown. Okay, so here we are at the decorating part of this video, where I decorated up the industrial estate with various techniques. First, I did this road decoration on the internal roads. This is an interesting method that I used here, by the way. Well, not the method how I added the road lights for these roads, because it is just simply choosing props as line style, then selecting a lamp asset for it. But I think a lot of people are already aware of that in the IMT mode. You can also use decals as line or filler styles, yet I have seen very few creators to use this feature. So I decided to use some road wear decals made by Ronix to decorate the roads, while other ones in their videos just place these decals as decal props. The advantage of this method is that first, I think you won't add to the prop count by this method, as I think. Second is, using this method, the decals can be better customized. For example, you can set their dimensions like width, but sadly there is a limit on how large a decal can be. And the best is that IMT mode would actually alter how these decals are rendered. So for example, if the road has a curve, you would see this at the small corners of these internal roads. These decals would actually bend along with the road, which cannot be made by just normally placing them as a decal prop. By the way, you could also see the buildings from the Industrial Evolution DLC I talked about that I used here as a loading bay. And it is not just a decoration, it is also a functional asset. I also did some detailing at the roundabout at the entrance of the industrial estate, where I just basically put some weeds and a dirt decal prop into the middle of it, completely recreating the texture of that contaminated ground in the Half-Life 2 video game. Then I wanted to make some logos and billboards of the companies on the buildings and in the front gardens surrounded by these nice wild vegetation that still seems to be well kept. At first I wanted to use some vanilla billboards to make it, as I didn't want to use real company logos and names, first because it is a fictional city, somewhere in Central or Eastern Europe, and the second, it is because some trademark issues, these are intellectual properties, so I don't want to just risk it. But for some reason, I couldn't lift the props from the ground, and at first, I thought it was just a bug, so I started to place down a lot of real-life billboards of brand logos. I converted them into procedural object to lift and resize them, but later I realized that it was just a setting in the prop anarchy mode and the extended managers library that I had to enable. So after I realized this, I just took down all the real life company logos and replaced them with the originally wanted vanilla billboards that I resized with the prop anarchy mode, because it is possible with it. And by the way, if one of the asset creators watch these videos, it would be really nice to create some fictional companies with brands and logos that could operate in Central or Eastern Europe, in the former Eastern Bloc. Or if you don't know how to make assets but you can design me a company logo, well, then you could just send me the image file in email or on Twitter or somewhere, and I would just apply it with some PO magicry. But it would be just like $2.20 did in his Oceania and Sunset City series, where he used a lot of these fictional company brands to boost up his series and cities. Then I moved on to the side of this waterway, where I think I am most proud of the two big conveyor belts that connect two big industrial buildings that are on the opposite sides of the canal, with the conveyor belt bridging over it. And I also tried to do some magic here with some class retaining wall and city key networks. These are adaptive network dependent assets, by the way. So there goes my plan to say goodbye to that mode because all of the bugs. But to be honest, it is not as buggy as it was used to be, when it caused a lot of problems like network connection issues for me in my save games. And I think I have actually found some pretty nice detailing methods here, as I have managed to create something that actually looks nice here, while I was experimenting with these networks using AN and IMT, like the fence or the overgrown grass clusters on the deck. But what is the best, is the climbing vines on the side of these retaining walls, just at the top somewhere above the water level, and all you need to achieve this is the two mods, the retaining wall network itself and some grass and the climbing vine assets from the workshop, but I think the late two can be also found just in the game and in one of the DLCs, and the result, it is a nice retaining wall overgrown by some cool vegetation. I did place some smokestacks too, because first, this is a big dirty industrial area here, just like in the water hazard section, and there were a lot of smokestacks there, and as I told you, I would really like to recreate the water hazard atmosphere here, which would be even more accurate if I didn't forget to place some industrial tanks or water towers around the industry along with the chimneys, because even the water tower from Half-Life 2 is on the workshop, and I even have it subscribed and already used it in the city, yet I somehow still forgot to add these and an extra detail. But anyway, you could see that I used a nice big gasometer asset instead. I also have a cool story about the smokestacks, as when I posted the previous screenshots of this episode on Twitter, or just X by its new name, then Amy Polizeifang, the creator of that big tall red checkered smokestack, just commented on my tweet, and it turned out that he actually follows me on Twitter. So it is a shout out to him and Dankeschön für den Schornstein Army. And to complete the detailing, I just placed down a lot of truck props at the loading bays and the warehouses just to make this industrial area a little bit more alive. And here we are at the ending cinematics of today's episode. Originally I wanted to build two of these big industrial estates, but it took so long to build just this one here that you saw on the video that I actually gave up building the other one, especially when I realized how many workers these big buildings need actually. So maybe I will just build the other industry in a separate video or just off camera. And I also didn't want to extend this video. I would like to keep my videos under than a half-hour length. So thanks for watching me today. In the next episode I am going to tackle the huge worker shortage with some new residential areas designed especially for the workers and based on some fictional and maybe some real-life locations after some real-life residential areas. If you like what I'm doing, just like and subscribe, or just follow me on X, you know, Twitter by its new name. I was Veladam01. See you later. Goodbye.